Live.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Northeastern Region RAC meeting. This Regional Advisory Council meeting is being held in Vernal, the DWR office here, as well as being streamed live on YouTube. This public forum allows you to express your opinions and ideas on wildlife management in our state. This RAC considers your feedback on the proposals before us today and reports them to the Wildlife Board. The Wildlife Board, not the RAC, is charged with setting wildlife policy for our state. Wildlife management is complex and sometimes it's emotionally charged. We all have ideas and opinions about what is best for Utah's wildlife. That's why we are here today, and that's good. We encourage those who want to express their opinion at today's meetings to fill out a comment card. We expect those in attendance to respect the people who speak, especially those who hold views that don't align with their own. Respectful behavior helps facilitate efficient meetings where RAC members can listen, digest, and address the concerns, ideas, and proposals being presented for consideration. Disrespectful behavior, including booing, yelling, cheering, or laughing while someone is speaking. You can also help maintain a respectful space by referring to people by name instead of descriptors of their physical characteristics, demeanor, or gender. If this behavior occurs, the RAC Chair will remind attendees to be respectful. If the behavior continues, the applicable individual or individuals will be asked to leave. Lastly, please help reduce distractions during the meeting by putting your phone on silent, and if you need to take a call, we ask that you step outside, especially with these two owls that seem to pick up every conversation. So my name's Eric Major, and I'm the vice chair. We'll excuse Grizz Aline today. He is at the Field Deer Committee meeting. I'd like to welcome Randy Dirth from the Wildlife Board and other members of the public and DWR that are here tonight. We'll go ahead and just do introductions. Real quick.
I'm Natasha Haddon, and I'm a wildlife biologist at the U.S. Forest Service.
Nathan Crapo, represent the public.
Eric Major, I'm representing the public.
I'm Rebecca Jones, and I represent non-consumptive users.
Richard Beeler, I represent the public. Jake Cougar, represent Bozeman.
Okay, and then just our procedures for references will, through the agenda items, we'll take questions from the RAC, and then we'll go with questions from the public, electronic comments from the public, and then public comments, the RAC comments and discussion, and then we'll call for a motion. Okay. We'll go ahead and move to the agenda items. Number 2 is approval of the agenda and minutes. Any questions about today's agenda or minutes from the last meeting?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Motion by Jake.
I'll second that motion.
Josh, thank you. All in favor? No RAC members online right now today. Okay. We'll go to the Wildlife Board meeting update. So skim through the Wildlife Board meeting that was held May 2nd in Farmington, just a summary of the motions. There's approval of the agenda and the minutes with no exceptions. The bug deer permit recommendations for 2024 was passed 3-2. The once in a lifetime permit recommendations for 2024. There was a motion made to approve the permit number recommendations as presented by the division, including increasing the moose permits from 22 to 25. And there was also a amended motion that added an increase to the bison permit numbers on 165-35 from 3 to 5. If I read that right, and I've lost it, but I think that amended motion passed. There was a second amended motion that didn't pass. And roll-up permit recommendations for 2024 was also passed unanimously. But pronghorn permit recommendations for 2024 was also passed unanimously. The antlerless permit recommendations were passed with a motion to add language in the guidebooks about not taking a cow with a calf. Shed antler gathering and big game rule amendments was passed as well. Let's see. That one was the one that had a few different motions. I think the motion that was made by Randy actually was that they asked the Shed Antler Gathering Committee to reconvene and recommend Shed Antler Gathering seasons dates for residents that matches the non-resident dates. The division should report back with a new recommendation from the committee during the December 2024 RAC meetings, January 2025 Wildlife Board meetings. This is to be placed on action log. So that was the results of that one. And the 2024 CWMU analyst recommendations were passed and 4 in favor and 1 recusing. Hopefully I interpreted that one right. I should have looked a little closer at item number 8. But is there any other questions or comments from the wildlife board meeting? We'll go ahead and turn time over to Miles for a regional update.
Okay, I'm Miles Hammer, Regional Supervisor for Regional Wildlife. So it's really starting to be a busy time of the year for us. There's lots and lots of events and field work kicking on for the summer season. So try to highlight some of the things that are going on and a few things that will be coming up over the next little while here in the region. So got a lot of events coming up. The first event will be the Badges and Bobbers event over at Little Monos Creek WMA, where law enforcement officers spend some time with kids and do some fishing. So that's a popular event each year that we have good participation, and it's a good opportunity for law enforcement folks to mingle with some of our folks in the public, especially our younger fishermen. So that's a good event coming up here right away. The second annual Wild Buck Shoot at Buckskin Hills is coming up on May 31st. This is kind of a spin-off from the Josie Shoot that we have for every year, and this is an opportunity for the guys to be able to shoot the day before. So that's a fun event. That's a 22 rifle shoot that goes on, and then followed up with long-standing Josie shoot coming up on June 1st. So we're looking forward to those events. They're well attended. We have people across the state that come to those events each year, so it's popular and kind of a fun one for us to host. There'll be 3 fishing day events held this year at Moose Pond and Lower Stillwater Ponds on June 8th on 3 fishing days. Those are actually hosted by the Forest Service, but it's a good opportunity for people that are learning to fish to go out and maybe take some a few tips and different things for folks that will be at those places. We've got the Osprey Watch coming up on July 6th at Flaming Gorge Dam with the holiday. That's an event that's really heavily attended by people traveling through the area or up there recreating. But anybody wants to learn more about ospreys, it's a good opportunity to be able to see those up fairly close with you're there at the dam, and we'll have equipment and things, people can get good looks at those. And then it's not on the slide, but I also mentioned on June 20th, it's the Roosevelt Nature Park and Community Fishery Grand Opening, just north of the hospital in Roosevelt. I took a look at it several weeks ago. It was looking awesome at the time, and I'm sure that it's just gotten better since then as work's continued. But that's going to be a really cool thing for the community in Roosevelt, for people to be able to go enjoy fishing, but also enjoy, kind of a nature park. So it looks really nice, and excited for that. Okay. Go ahead and move into law enforcement. A lot of work going on in law enforcement. They've been working some illegal turkey baiting cases. Birds have actually been legally harvested on some of those. So it seems like every year we have a few of those cases that take place. So been busy doing that, as bear hunting starts up. We've been looking at some legal bear case, potential legal bear bait sites, that kind of enforcement surrounding the bear hunting and bear baiting. Got trespassing cases this year on private property, people sneaking in, picking up shed antlers. I think we'll make some cases there as well. So that's been a good effort. And then we've spent a lot of time this year up at Flaming Gorge doing some saturation patrols, especially around the spawning season. When some of our fishermen will up there. So the Aquatic Invasive Species Program, that's really ramping up now with the holiday weekend and boarders traveling through the state. So we'll have people at some boat ramps, especially in some of the larger water bodies like Flaming Gorge. And then also the check station just below Steinkert Dam is now open. So that's a place where we hope to be able to detect and move the threats, any threats for aquatic invasive species that may be coming into the state or coming from Lake Powell. So anyhow, just ask people to be as compliant as they can. There's huge ramifications if AIS gets into a lot of our water bodies, so especially some of the mussels and those types of things. It's something we're really asking the public to take seriously and try to do their part. And then lastly, law enforcement, again, they'll be participating in the Badgers and Robbers event, helping out with the National Archery School Program events around the state as well. Busy time for law enforcement.
We're going to pause for just a second.
Gonna change
There's-
one
we have
second.
some errors occurring. Next one.
See, are we sharing this down?
Okay, our aquatic section's especially busy right now, going a lot of different places. This is the time of year where they do a lot of stream restoration projects, and other habitat work surrounding aquatics. They've been up to Lake Canyon doing some repair on the stream, some areas where we had some major blowout events that came through the last couple of years. So trying to get that stream back in condition. As you may know, Lake Canyon Lakes are one of our food sources for South Tabitha Stream, Colorado River cut through. We do have fish that go up the stream to spawn, so it's important stream for that conservation effort. Looks like we've had a partial winter kill up at East Park Reservoir. There are fish in there, but looks like there's been winter kill, which we've never really experienced up there before. So we'll be just trying to look into that and see maybe what might have happened. But the good news, all of the Diamond Mountain reservoirs, all over winter fish, didn't really detect any winter kill up there, and the fish are actually growing good and looking great. There's fish approaching 20 inches in several of those lakes, so that's good. Our native aquatics crew are just finishing pike minnow estimate surveys this week down the Green River, and then they're going to be moving into some razorback sucker work. Larval razorback suckers were detected in the Green River this past weekend, and so the Bureau of Reclamation and Fish and Wildlife Service are now releasing more water out of Flaming Gorge Dam for probably the next week or so to help entrain larval razorback suckers into some of the wetlands like Stewart Lake. So our focus will be managing water to try to achieve as much entrainment of larval fish into that system as possible. So just recreators and folks just need to be aware. I think the river's already coming up quite a bit, but it's going to come up some more for the next week or so before it goes back down. So a lot of work going on in aquatics. We'll go to the next slide and talk more about aquatics. Just finished up our annual gill netting in Flaming Gorge, both in Wyoming and in Utah, and caught a lot of big fish. One thing we are seeing with some of the big fish is they're not as good a condition as they could be. They're a little bit skinny sometimes, and really it just that speaks to the limitations and food that's in there for them, kokanee. And so there was a new episode of the DWR podcast. It's called Wild. It was released this week, and it has Ryan Mosley from our project leader up at Plain Gorge, as well as John Walrath from Wyoming Game and Fish. They just discuss some of the challenges that are facing Plain Gorge. And so there's a link to that if anybody's interested in listening. But bottom line is there's lots of small lake trout in the reservoir that are eating the kokanee when they're young in the year up to 1 year old. And that seems to be the bottleneck where we're losing most of the kokanee. And of course, we have to have kokanee to feed large lake trout. So if we can reduce those lake trout numbers, those small lake trout numbers, it'll lead more forage for the big fish. And it'll also allow the remaining smaller fish to do better and grow faster as well. So there's going to be some regulations proposed by both states this year, coming up into the fall. But first, there's going to be a statewide angler survey. We'll go out this summer just to talk about some of the recommendations that will be taken forward, moving forward with on Plain Gorge, Pelican, and other waters in the region and state as well. So anyhow, let's go to the next slide.
Okay, we're gonna stop and reshare it really quick.
Okay. Okay, this is kind of, I guess, not a pretty slide, but this is what's called a field small or a pup lake trout, particularly the fish that are under 28 inches. As you can see, this fish has 1 year-old kokanee in its belly. We've seen some of them will have 6 or 7 at times. The latest population estimate of kokanee, of small lake trout in Plain Gorge is approaching, I think, a couple 100,000 fish. So if each one of those pups eat 10 kokanee a year, that's probably eating everything you stocked in there, plus some of the wild recruitment. So it's a big problem that anglers can really help out in trying to reduce that population. These are just an example of some of the fish up in Diamond. I think this is out of collars, but they're good fat fish this year, so people should go up there and try to catch them where they can. And for those of you who may have not ever seen a pike minnow, this is one of the pike minnows we got this year from the Green River. The numbers seem to be down a little bit this year, but pike minnow, kind of interesting predatory fish. They used to get upwards of 100 pounds back in around the turn of the 1900s in that era. But they're an interesting fish. Some people actually fish for them at times. They're similar to a fish for a trout or a pike or something like that. So.
We're gonna do this again.
Okay.
Yes. There we go.
Okay. Wildlife folks are also busy. Of course, they're busy all year round. The sage-grouse leks now, counts are now complete. Numbers look good. They appear to be up again this year. So sage-grouse do cycle a little bit. So we're on the upswing for that cycle for sure, but glad to see good numbers. It's nuisance bear season. This time of year, bears start coming out. So Just asking the public to keep a good, clean camp, no matter where you're at. That saves a lot of headaches down the road. So, public can help out with that a lot. Our native or sensitive species biologists will be doing burrowing owl and bat surveys this year. Those are some of the species that are going to be focusing on this summer. And then we're going to be doing a bunch of work with bighorn sheep, ptarmigan, and mountain goats up in the Iowin. We held an wildlife ag working group meetings this year in Duchesne County to talk about just some of the conflicts and the issues surrounding wildlife and agriculture. So there were some good discussions with that, and I think there'll be some future actions and things that will come out of that after having some discussions. So that was a good effort, and I think we'll continue to do those kinds of things in the future. We're still working on the single trailhead issue on the south side of the Book Cliffs. Technically, that trailhead falls in the Southeast region, but the first mile or so that crosses Ute tribal lands, and so we're working with the Ute tribe with some draft agreements to regain access for the public to cross that section of trail. But at the same time, there's some partners that are looking at alternative access routes down there as well. So we're hoping to have some things in place by the hunting season, but for now, the public will have access from the 10-mile old side on the north. We're actively working on that, especially down the Southeast region. Hope to have some resolution as soon as we can. Last slide, or half that section, just wanted to highlight the funding that's taking place this year. We just completed the proposal cycle of all the habitat projects statewide. This year, there were 23 projects funded or partially funded here in the Northeast region. Funding for that will kick in the 1st of July. And that funding has all come through either Watershed Restoration Initiative or DWR's Habitat Council. And then there's just a ton of different partners that contribute funding into that, state and federal agencies, sportsman's groups, and other partners and private landowners as well. So the total investment for the Northeast region this year is about $3.68 million. So that's a pretty sizable amount of money and sizable investment into watersheds and habitat work here in the region. So that's pretty exciting, and we'll hope that we can work out of that. So that's it for me. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Miles. Thanks for working through the PowerPoint on you. We'll move along to the Cougar update. Darren will.
Thank you. Glad to be here tonight. I think maybe I'll just quickly hit a couple highlights from the presentation. As many of you know, the legislature made quite a few changes to how we manage cougars in the state last year, and we made quite a few changes to our rules as a result of that. When we looked at things this year, we felt like since all those changes had just taken place, we weren't going to recommend any changes for the RAC to vote on tonight. So that's why this is an informational. We did want to show some data and maybe talk through some stuff applying to mountain lions, just so that we can kind of compare last year to this year, maybe see how some of those changes have affected cougar harvest. Largely, it looks like we probably peaked in the numbers of the mountain lions we have in the state in 2016, and since then we've seen kind of a trend down. One other thing worth noting is it looks like in the last couple of years, the trend in mountain lion populations continues to follow that downward trajectory, but mule deer started to come back. So that's the first time we've seen in maybe 20 years that those two populations are diverging. They tend to kind of follow each other. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what comes of that, if anything. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Council has any questions for me, and we can certainly do that.
Quick question, did you guys break out the harvest data for age classes that were harvested?
We have that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Overall, average age since about 2009 is about 3.2 harvest. In 2023, which is the last year we had all the ages compiled, so this year's still ongoing, it was 3. So there hasn't been a huge change. That's the highest average age was back in 2016 when we thought we probably had our peak mountain lions. That makes sense.
What was that age there?
It was 4.2 that year. So about a year older on average.
You're saying you're seeing a split between the mule deer population and the lion.
Right.
Is there, you think there might be a correlation with the lower lion population and lion?
I think that's definitely something we can look at. We've got really good data. I know you've heard from our big game team on the mule deer side of this with our collars. And we do still have some units where adult mortality is high, so we've still got some concerns on some of those. But statewide, and again, this is a couple years old, just because of the nature of the model we're running. But it does look like a couple of years ago those populations started. So if our goal was to reduce mountain lion densities and see if we could take some pressure off the mule deer populations, that may be, it's a good sign if that's the goal.
Any other questions for the RAC?
Is it having the same effect on bighorn sheep? Is the mortality rate lower?
We generally get really focused on our bighorn herds, and so we keep a real close eye on them. And whenever we detect a lion getting into those sheep, we're pretty quick to get in there and try and remove. We kind of like we would with domestics. So we do some pretty immense, aggressive management for because one lion really could well, and we saw that a little bit with our nursery herd. It was more than one lion. So it can be devastating effect. So we're pretty aggressive when it comes to sheep.
From watching the presentation, I was wondering how confident you are with the mountain lion population numbers.
I'm as confident as we can be right now. We do have a study going with Utah State University right now looking at carnivore species just across the board. And we're trying to find some cost-effective ways to get a better estimate that's more up to date. So we're looking at all kinds of things. We're using scat detection dogs, and what you do there is dogs detect scat, and we get DNA from that, identify individuals, and calculate the population based on that. They're using camera traps. They're using hair snare, barbed wire closures, and so we're going to see if there's a method that really makes sense both monetarily and time. Our biologists have limited time, so hopefully we'll get better estimates. But for now, I think that we're pretty confident in the trend. But again, it's not perfect. It's always years old.
So if I understood right, between other RACs and stuff, the goal is not to eradicate the cougar population. Is there a goal in mind that you'd like that population to be down to before you make changes again?
I think, again, since we don't have a super reliable, up-to-date population estimate, what we'll be looking at is the deer side. And we have really good deer data. So, one thing with lions that we really pay attention to is the adult mortality caused by lions. If that's above 7%, that's enough to have a top-down pressure on those mule deer herds. So we want to make sure we're keeping lion predation below that. So that's probably the goal that we'll be keeping our eye on the most.
Any other questions? We'll entertain questions from the public. Just have a mic, but if you do have a question, to stand and state your name. And we'll go ahead and move to electronic comments.
We just had one person that left a comment and supported only one person really voted, so there was 100% that someone agreed with the presentation. But their comment was they wanted to see trapping cougars continue, and that was all they had.
public comments for this item? Thank you. Is there any other comments or discussion from the RAC? Okay, if not, we'll entertain a motion. This one, original. Thank you. If I knew that. Okay, we'll go ahead and move to chat with CWMU amendment R657-37.
And I don't know that I want to go over everything that we discussed in the PowerPoint, but I will say that anytime we do private land things, there's a balance to strike on it. Sometimes it's a pretty difficult balance. This committee met for a really long time, and I really want to thank them for all their time and effort that they put into this. And I think we came up with some really good recommendations out of this committee. With that, if anybody wants to dive into any of those topics, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ted, remind me what the minimum acreage is.
5,000 for deer and pronghorn, 10,000 for moose and elk.
And they still have to have that contiguous,
Yes.
and then the 640 acres would be separate from that.
Yeah.
On the trade lands that are in there, how many, like, what's the total acreage of the trade lands for provided for the state? I was just looking on Hunt Planner, I find like two maybe parcels, but maybe it's really hard to see when they're so small on that website.
Yeah, and there's probably 10 to 12 CWMUs that have trade lands. I don't have an acreage, but a lot of times it's similar to the acreage of the public land. Usually that's what the goal is to try to get it to be about the same as what the public land that's inside of the CWMU. So I could look it up and see how many, but there's not a ton that do trade lands. And yeah, and while we're talking about trade lands, I feel like I need to take the advantage more, but when public land is in a CWMU, it's just for that species, the species that are there to be hunted. You can access the public land for whatever other legal purposes, to walk your dog, to hunt coyotes, hunt upland game, do whatever else you want to do on that. So whether it's trade lands or just public land in the CWMU, you have those abilities to access that, and it's just part of the hunt boundary.
So when you apply, when you go looking for a CWMU, is there like anywhere that says this CWMU has trade lands?
Yeah, so we have on our maps on a hunt planner, there is a place that you can click trade lands. Yeah, and it will show you all the trade lands. If you zoom in on it, if you click it, then it will tell you which one it's tied to. And I don't know how far we're on it, but it will eventually be, if a CWMU has public land or trade lands, that it's going to be listed on there that has trade lands. So you'll know which ones that, as you go through the planner, have trade lands or public land. And yeah. So I feel like we've made improvements on that, and we're continuing to try to keep improving that transparency on that.
How many, I know we got a lot of deer CWMUs that are at the 90-10. They don't offer any antlerless tags. How many of them do we have? Whether, I know that most of them are deer, and we don't want to beat those dogs anywhere, but.
Yeah, I don't know the total that are just deer only. I do know, I say I know, and then I think there's at least two, I want to say it's 2 or 3 CWMUs in the state that offer no tags. I think it's 3. So all the other ones that are deer only don't offer well, any of the rest of them that are deer, have deer, whether it's deer only or other species, they don't offer no tags.
Is it fair to be offering the 90-10 split to them when they're, where the whole, if the public's gonna get antlers tags for them to get the 90-10 split, how can we offer them the 90-10 split and not have something back for the public?
Yeah, so I think when it's a cooperative unit, part of the cooperation is that we allow them to have some vouchers that they can sell, and in turn, they help us manage wildlife. So I think even, and I wasn't there for the beginning of when they decided splits, but even at the beginning, I don't know that it was ever like guaranteed there's going to be antlerless tags. But when the need arises, that they will have them, and that those will go to the public, and it will be to help manage the animals towards our objective. So it is something that probably should fluctuate with the populations of whatever are in that CWMU. As we, like, for example, as we grow out, CWMUs probably should help harvest more elk. As we get back or under objective, they should probably harvest less or not.
I don't know this program all that well, but isn't there 3 separate split categories?
There's 4.
4?
Yep.
I'd like to see if they're not going to have, if they shouldn't be able to have the 90-10 split if they don't have the antlerless tags to give.
We talked about this, probably not a ton at the committee. But we did talk about it. And there was just a feeling there that a lot of CWMUs would just pull out. And
I find that hard to believe, but they're still making money off of it.
they are. And so you don't know, like, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. Or are we willing? And I guess it's ultimately the wildlife board's choice. Are we willing to risk it, whether they learn or not? Or, you know, as the division with our recommendation, and I think the committee felt that it wasn't worth that risk of pushing that. It is difficult once somebody has something they had for 30 years to say it doesn't work anymore. It's hard to take things back. So
Yeah.
I think that's why we ended on that recommendation for those.
I know we probably got an email about this. Someone was asking about just the hunt planner and updating the contact information. Has that been an issue in the past, or is that something?
Yeah, I mean, and it's part of this rule is that by March 1st, all of the CWMUs will look at hunt planner and make sure that all of their stuff is accurate on our hunt planner, so we can have that all up to date for people to look at what they need to look at.
So question I have on the eliminating acreage variances. If I understand right, there's still some CWMUs that are grandfathered into that, correct?
Yeah.
My question is I know if there is a variance allotted now with your proposal that, you know, one extra tag will go to the public, with those areas that are grandfathered in, are they held to that same stipulation that one more of their tags are going to be given to the public, or are they still the 90-10 split?
They would still fall under the 90-10 split. So it kind of echoed the comments I just made. Sometimes it's when you've done a program for so long, it's hard to move that. But it's a lot easier to move it going forward.
Those units that are over objective, it sounds like it's the northern CWMUs. Can you just go over it? The things the division is proposing to do to help get the unit back in.
Yeah, I'll pull it up on my slide in front of me so I don't miss any.
There's been discussion about some of the RAC's people. I like them.
Yeah, And so if it's 10% or more over objective for 3 years, then we have the ability to work with each individual CWU and say which ones of these would work for what CWUs. Some of those tools is that every antlerless hunter would be able to purchase a second antlerless elk permit. All of the antlered hunters would also be able to purchase an antlerless permit. We'd have those CWMUs come to the advisory committee and say, hey, what's your plan? Because on some of these, there's a lot of CWMUs there. We just want them all to be working together and pushing in the same direction. So we'd have them come in and say, hey, what's your plan? How are you guys going to work together to get this done? We could do a depredation hunt. That would be with public hunters. We also put in there the ability to have private vouchers. Sometimes these elk will just move through a CWMU really quickly. We don't want to miss any of those opportunities. So if we have an opportunity that we need to really just get some hunters out there, we can give the operator some vouchers that they can give out. They can't make any money off of them, but they can give it out to whoever they need to that can respond quickly and get some harvest. Adding an emergency hunt at the end of the year. You can also do a harvest objective, saying we need this CWMU, we need you to kill X amount, and if they don't get there, then we'd be able to make up that harvest on the end of it, and encourage them to do a reciprocal program. And I think what you're kind of getting at is we have all these options. The ones that we're going to try to use and use first would be the public options. We always want to try to get as many public hunters out as we can. So that would be our priority and our goal. And with that being said, there probably will be times where we need to get those vouchers out to the CWMU to get some harvest.
So if this passes, would those start this fall?
We would like to get them there this fall. The board probably needs to look at them and approve them. So I've actually been having these conversations just lately. I think you'd likely see us come back at least to the board. We haven't decided if it'd go through all the RACs too, but probably in August, saying these are the CWMUs and these are the tools that we're going to use on the CWMUs.
And then you would hopefully notify the public first that if you have an ammo stag, you can buy.
Yeah. Yep. Would make that known to all of them. And then going forward, it would probably be just part of by spring CWMU antlerless recommendations that we'd at that time say, okay, for this winter, these CWMUs are doing X, Y, and Z.
Because it would be good to, have a report at the end of the year too, saying of the elk that were harvested in these over injected units, like how many were given, extra tags were given to the public, and how many were given just to hunters, right?
And I think we could do that in the spring when we're asking for what we're going to do that fall. We can report on what happened in the previous fall. I think a lot of that will come up in our CWMU advisory committee meetings, which are public meetings as well, that will have some of those discussions. So I think that information will be done.
I just looked it up. I got an email from someone that had already looked up this information. There were 56 CWMUs that are receiving the 90-10 split that do not offer any antlerless tags for any species. But it says most of those are deer.
Yeah. I think that's what they said last time at the RAC.
They don't actually email like us.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Any questions from the public on this item? Or summarize public comments.
Okay, there were quite a few people that weighed in on this one. 69% of the people strongly agreed, 7.7% somewhat agreed, 15% somewhat disagreed, and 7.7% strongly disagreed. So there were some two themes I'll just briefly summarize. People have positive comments towards the proposal. There were a number of people that supported the CWMU program. And then people agreed with the antlerless population harvest tools that are being proposed. And another person agreed with the guest policy that's incorporated in this. So now there were a few people with a few critiques. One person felt like that the private hunter should not be limited to the same rules as the public hunter. They felt like with the private land, they should be able to do what they wanted, not necessarily be held to the same standard that the public hunter is. There were a couple of people who were against any trade lands. And then we did have people that weighed in that said they did not like the 90-10 tag split. They felt like it should have more, the public should get more of those tags. Another comment was the fact that the public should get more days to hunt. Public gets 7 days, whereas the private gets many more days than that. And then there was a comment to change the season dates to coincide with adjacent public land hunts. And just another comment that they felt like the rules would be better for the public.
Thank you. You have a couple public comments, right?
Yep.
Wade, do you want to go? State your name, speak louder than I'm speaking.
My name's Clay Batty. I'm here tonight representing the CWMU Association. I was just recently voted onto the board. Previous to that, I had the opportunity to sit on this committee that reviewed the rule. One of the takeaways I think that I took away from being a part of the committee is there are a lot of passionate people, and that's a good thing. Passionate people for wildlife. And I think that the wildlife wins when that happens. There's a lot of people on the committee from different walks of life. And so it caused there to be a lot of conversations, a lot of spirited debate. Since the committee's, I don't know if it's banned or whatever, but since being off of it and having conversations, I can almost promise you that any questions you might have, it was covered in those committee meetings. So I would personally like to thank all those people that sat on that committee, that gave that time and are passionate about wildlife. I think Utah is a flagship for their wildlife, and it's because of sportsmen, it's because of public, it's because of private lands, it's because of all of it. It succeeds so well. So I just wanted to get up here and say that the CWMU Association, even though we didn't get everything we wanted, the public didn't, we tried to come to the best consensus that we did, and we wholeheartedly support this as presented by the DWR.
David, did you have a comment on this item? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm David Gurr. I'd like to thank the DWR and the CWMU for giving us 501c3s an opportunity to go hunt. You know, I'm not sure how many 501c3s there's. I don't remember the exact numbers. I was just going to look them up. But I think in the last 11 years, we've been on 50 hunts that we've taken to veterans. So we purchased some, we had some of the landowners give us some. We've used the reciprocal tags, which is an awesome program that keeps us going. And all of the operators that I've met think of wildlife management. They're doing the best for the wildlife, in my opinion. And I've been on 50 of them. And don't know of any of them that I've missed in the last 11 years. So I'm in total support of what the DWR and the CWMU are working together and doing a great program. And I hope it continues because it's a great program. It gives, and personally, I've hunted on the public side of it too. And I enjoyed my hunt. I drew out and I enjoyed it. So I fully support their recommendations on whatever they're doing. I read through it. I'm in 100% support with the DNR and the CWMU on what they're doing. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, David. All right, are there any RAC comments or discussion?
I'd like to say I actually support this program a lot. I think I actually agree with a lot of the stuff that come out of this committee they put together. I do wish there was a little more, a better split with the sportsmen, and obviously I represent the sportsmen. I hear a lot of chatter about that. I do think it's a good program, and I would like to see it continue.
I kind of second what Jake said. I've seen a lot of good come out of CWMUs. I don't know a lot about them. I haven't come over around this area, but as I've been able to listen and study these last few weeks, I think there has been a lot of thought, a lot of people take a lot of time and effort to maybe know a lot more than I do when I've been evaluating these things. I know one of my daughters had the privilege of harvesting the antelope on one of these, and it was a great opportunity for her, one of her first hunts. I know they do a lot of great things with that's some different things. And I just hope that maybe on some of these areas that are over objective that we can utilize those opportunities with youth or veterans or with organizations that's been shared today to be able to help harvest some of those and get some of those numbers back down. And I think it's been expressed that the public will come first in that. And if it doesn't work with that, then they'll take extra other options. So I just hope that's, and I think with a lot of operators, that is in the forefront of their minds, ones that I've dealt with, so.
So I just look at it, if, say one of those older ones that has the 90-10 split is required to go another way and they decide to drop out, then the public's lost it from there, essentially. Because otherwise they're not going to offer anything about why you have to draw that, other than your tag and they trespass. So in my mind, it's a great thing. Motion, have a comment, whatever. Yes, let's do.
We'll make a motion to accept the CWMU rule amendment as presented by the division model.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Rebecca. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Motion passes.
Jake, you want to state why you oppose? Is it the tax bill?
I didn't mean to oppose.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I understand.
All unanimous. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead and move to conservation cement program rule amendments.
Good evening, everyone. Just a little history on the conservation permit programs that I'd like to give, if that's okay, Mr. Chair. So the conservation permit program started in the early 80s. And it was really based around sheep, bighorn sheep. And the reason why is because of what happened to sheep in our state. So when the pioneers settled Utah, bighorn sheep are the most predominant big game animal in the state. There are more bighorn sheep than mule deer, elk, moose, or weren't any moose, but there are more bighorn sheep than anything. And bighorn sheep are susceptible to disease and other issues. And so by about the turn of the century, bighorn sheep were almost extirpated from the state. On the Wasatch, I've said this in other RAC meetings, but the last sheep was seen on the Wasatch just above the G, if anybody knows where Pleasant Grove is, in 1926. In that early part of the 1900s, sheep were extirpated from a lot of areas, including completely extirpated from the Uintas, from the Bookless, and other places. There was a small remnant population in Southeast Utah. And that small remnant population, there was a lot of desire to take that and start to put those sheep back into their native habitats. But there wasn't money to do it. So at the time, there was recommended, hey, what if we auctioned one permit for one male and then use the proceeds from that to then transplant, have our first bighorn sheep transplant. They did it. They auctioned the first bighorn permit. They got $20,000, and that was enough money at the time to initiate the first transplant. It's been quite a success story. Just if you look just at sheep, we're sitting at about 4,500, which is it's a good number, right? 4,500 bighorn on the landscape. It's probably about the historical records. Obviously, they get hard. It's hard to determine historical records. That's about 4.5% of what was here at the time of settlement, about, if you believe those records. In interpreting those records. So there were over 100,000 bighorn at the time of settlement by Europeans, I should say. Since then, the program has expanded to other species. It's been used for transplants for pronghorn. It's been used to reintroduce elk. Elk were also extirpated around the turn of the century from the state of Utah. And it's been used with a lot of success stories, and it's been used a lot in our habitat restoration program. It's the seed money for a lot of what is the watershed restoration initiative for the division. And it's really, really versatile in that it's not federal money, so it can be used as federal match a lot of times. So this last year, I believe it was almost $5 million that groups put into that habitat restoration. And that money is leveraged again and again to where on average every year, we're spending between $35 and $45 million to restore habitat. And that's for wildlife, it's for producers and the ranching community, and it's a good program. You know, when wildlife wins and producers win, I think that's a place where it's good for everyone. So we had a little bit of cleanup. There were some code changes, just a little bit of cleanup with state parks and rec, not being state parks and rec anymore. And then some other changes brought on by the statewide elk plan as far as draw order and things like that go. And so we made those changes and brought it around to folks. And with that, I'll take any questions about the conservation permit. Any changes?
One question that Chris had, he's not here, but he texted me, was about the Antelope Island. There was a strikeout on Antelope Island being excluded, I think. Is that, and I guess conservation is supposed to permit on.
No, it's still excluded, but it's the change in the wording of state parks. Used to be state parks and rec, and now there's a division of state parks and a division of rec.
Okay, that's almost, I think, where he was. Thank you.
How many tags are we giving out from this program?
It's about it's just over 300 currently. And it's a percentage of public tags. So, yeah, and so this program's highly detailed in rule. And so you can look at it all, but there's a maximum of 8 per unit. So even if the Wasatch, which has the most elk tags of any of any elk unit in the state, there's only 8 there. And you hit 8 at 151 permits.
How many units have 8? How many of them are getting that?
Ooh, I would have to look at,
Just a general percentage wise, is it 3/4, half?
I'm trying, so there's about 3,000 elk tags in the state, but then there are a lot of units that just don't, they only have 60 tags or whatever, so they're not, I can't answer that right now, but I can get you that information.
How did you guys come up with the ratio numbers? The 8 tags per 150 public permits?
Yeah, I don't think there's any magic behind that. I think it was what felt good at the time, and that number was determined a long time ago.
Is the DWR open to maybe increasing that number to, instead of 150, to say 300, to reduce the number, make it so that there's more, it's a saturated system, that's what I'm saying. We give out a lot of those tags.
So what you're saying,
have you guys looked
essentially
into maybe reducing the number?
reducing it to 150 from 300.
No, well, kind of.
Yeah,
I mean, we could, I think there's a couple ways you could do it. You could increase the amount of public tags it takes. And I just use 300 as a general, but maybe even reducing it to 200 to get, and then you spread that 1 to 8 tags out through that gap, which would in turn reduce the number of tags we are
allocating the conservation program. Yeah, we haven't had those discussions. I don't know that we're opposed to having those discussions. I also think that,
wondering what kind of impact, if you guys looked into the impact reducing the amount would have.
that gets really complicated because then you're taking into account scarcity and revenue derived. So I don't know that I have an answer for that tonight, but I don't know what revenue impact that would have. Some, probably.
What do other states do?
Utah does more than any Western state. We don't shy away from that. We also, we spend more in Utah on habitat restoration than Nevada spends on their whole agency. So it's a huge portion of what our annual budget is to improve wildlife habitats. And so we have more, but we have better data, more collaring projects, more wildlife populations from transplants. So we sacrifice some, and the public does sacrifice that, and we get back more populations because of that.
I guess in term, kind of in line with Jake's question, it's like I looked on I hadn't ever been on your website, the conservation permit website, and it has a lot of those reports. I guess the last one was 2022. It's on their website currently.
There's 23, but the way it's listed, 23 is like up above it in the text. And I wish that it were just down in the, but 23 is
So
close.
I looked at 2022 and, some of the tags are, $500,000 for a deer tag. But then you have turkey tags that are $200. Is turkey tag, is that $200 worth the money that the public is giving up on their permit, I guess?
No, that's fair. There's a couple ways to look at it. One is turkey tags are over the counter now. So anybody who wants to hunt turkeys basically can. The other way to look at it is when something is a conservation permit species, the way the rule is written, then we can spend those monies on that species. So having it be a species opens it up to that 500,000 generated by you. And that is where the big benefit comes in.
I guess it's the same a little bit on animal stealth tags. The public is.
Yeah, there's, if I remember right, there's about 20 of those. And the other way to look at this too is there's a lot of people that go to these banquets that can't afford that meal tag. But they probably could afford a turkey tag or a cow tag. And so it provides an opportunity where there's a lot of diversity in income and equity. It provides an opportunity for a person that doesn't have the resources that we may have to buy a conservation.
Has there been a year-over-year increase in the amount of money that's coming in on this program, or is it pretty staying the same, or I'm just wondering if we're increasing?
Yeah, it's not always the same, and as of late, it has definitely increased. Yeah, I think you're seeing the same thing with just regular economic inflation, right? Everything's costing more, everything's more, and the price of conservation permits has definitely increased.
Is it possible we're oversaturating the system and reducing value on some of those tags? We're giving out so many of them that, they're not, guys that would spend the money on them aren't having, they're waiting until, oh, there's another one at this other bank, but I can just wait to get it there if it gets to here. And then
I think if we were seeing that, we'd probably see a reduction in price instead of an increase in price, which is the opposite of what we're seeing.
Has there ever been a lottery where people that don't have the access to the money for auctions, where multiple people could bid on those tags in a lottery system?
So we don't have a lottery because that would be
state law?
unconstitutional, but we do have a drawing. And so there are multiple drawings. There's a drawing, there's the regular drawing that the division runs, and that takes into account a points system, where those who put in longer have a higher likelihood of drawing that permit. And then there's also a random drawing at the expo every year, and there's about 200 permits in the expo where anybody can put in for $5 and try to obtain one of these tags that way. And that was kind of the thought behind the expo, is that, that's another way to generate revenue where it draws a lot of folks to our state, draws a lot of folks to the expo, which is a pretty cool way to highlight Utah wildlife, and provide an opportunity where everybody can afford it.
Speaking of that, would the division be willing to move a percentage of these conservation tags into, can't use the word raffle, but a drawing that the general public would have even more opportunity? Not just the expo tags, but these conservation tags in particular, and you could probably even get the sportsman's organizations to run these drawings. And it would be more, give more general public the opportunity to participate in the tags.
Well, and I think
how much money could be raised that way. I know Arizona just did away with all their auction tags, and they're doing drawings for all those. I don't think they they started implementing some of those.
Yeah, and I was asked this another act, would that bring in more money or less money? And the answer is, well, it depends, right? There are a lot of factors there, because it depends on the draw of the event. It depends on the value or the desire of that permit. And so I don't know the answer to that. The truth is probably sometimes it would bring in more, some it would bring in less. And I would go back and say, I feel like we feel like as an agency, we have a pretty good balance where the majority of the permits go through a public draw. It's a sacrifice, but it's a small sacrifice. Percentage wise, it's pretty low that goes to this. And so we feel like we already offer those. We already offer the public draw to the agency, and we already offer the expo.
So I know there's a lot of sentiment with the public or the people that are involved in the hunting community. People look at this, we're giving out 300 tags that are being taken away from the general public in a draw. In a day and age where point creep is just starting to skyrocket out of control, I think I've seen numbers of it's in the thousands. It would actually make a huge dent if those tags had been in the general public's raw system for this whole time. It would make a huge dent in the point creep over that time period. At the same time, I actually really like this system a lot. I like that we're raising this money for conservation, what we've done with it.
Well,
But the general public's perception of it isn't the same as what a lot of times.
yeah, I think it's highly divided. I think I have a lot of folks that call me to let me know they really support and appreciate the program. Although they might not ever buy a tag, they appreciate that they benefit from increased wildlife populations. And I have folks that call me and say, hey, they'd rather see it go away. There are a lot of other benefits to this program that we don't discuss besides the financial benefits. And that is, for a long time, the agency, we were kind of on our own. Like, we would make decisions and take on projects and do things on our own. And this forced conservation relationships, right? Where we don't sell these, we allow a third party to sell these. It broadened those who care about conservation and gave them a tool and a voice to care. And so the partnerships that come out of the conservation program, maybe even bigger than the money that comes back from the conservation program. There are a lot of people that are more involved in wildlife because of the conservation program that wouldn't be involved with that.
When I was looking over the report from 2022, I guess, you talk about, the habitat projects that you work and moving animals. But another interesting thing is that this money helped purchase that, was it with Cimarron?
Oh, Cinnamon Creek.
Cimarron Creek.
Yeah, which in an area of northern, not all Utah is the same, right? We have areas with a lot of public land, right? And then we have areas with not a lot of public land. And that was a piece of land that was, it was a Sittler school trust piece. And the sportsmen and the community up there felt really strongly about maintaining that as public open space. And so they worked with us and worked with their legislators to have us be able to do that and maintain it. And yeah, that's where the funding came from. A lot of the funding.
Can you share with us the breakdown of kind of where those funds go? I think that's kind of some misunderstanding from maybe some of the public. Just maybe misunderstanding what a percentage goes to conservation, what percentage goes to those organizations. Can you break that down for us?
Sure, absolutely. So the way it works is that they're right off the top, 30% comes back to the division every year. And they write that check to us in September, right? So whatever the permit sold for, 30% is transferred back to the agency. That's referred to as like internal conservation permit monies. But that 30% then, that's what we use for a lot of our flights and surveys. And we use that money as match. So it ends up that we can take that money and use on a 75-25 split with Pittman Robertson dollars, which is the excise tax on guns and ammo and archery equipment. And we're able to use that and that's how we are able to fly and monitor elk, and deer, and moose, and sheep, and then also run a lot of big research and collaring projects. So that's the 30%. Then there's 60% of that money that comes back to the agency in a cooperative agreement, where the group that sold the permit and the agency both have to be on the same page. And we use the WRI database as the clearinghouse for that. So in the WRI database, it tracks every one of those, and it says, whether it's a habitat project or whatever it is, it says, okay, they want to fund this to this level, and we're okay with that, right? So that's the other 60%. So that leaves 10% for the groups. And they use that 10% for administrative overhead. And I mean, and I've had people ask me to wrong or right, that's where it is. And that 10%, these permits are not easy to sell and market. It doesn't just happen. There's a lot of work put in. The state that eliminated theirs, they came and they were so proud of the expo that they use they keep 100% of the money they raised. And their commission decided to go away and go a different direction, which is fine. That's Arizona. But at the XY, we did a podcast on this, and he said, well, we keep 100%. I said, yeah, you keep 100% because Utah sacrifices 10%. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're not selling your tags in Arizona. You're coming here. You're coming here to this event because you know that you can market those permits here and get more money for them. And if we weren't giving back 10%, you wouldn't be able to come here and market it because somebody has to pay for the work that goes into this. And so that's the breakdown. It's basically, it's a 30, 60, 10.
Doesn't a lot of those organizations still use that 10% in the system as well?
Yeah, that's the other big secret. I guess it's not a secret, but a lot of the organizations commit that 10% back to. A lot of them are spending more than the 90% back on wildlife. And they spend more than what they get in conservation permit revenue towards wildlife. Yeah. Whether that's banquet funds, other funds they generate.
How many once in a lifetime or limited entry tags given to the program?
So all the permits that are given to the program, except for like cow elk would be limited entry. It's so that 20, so it's about that 300.
Once in a lifetime or limited entry antlered
Permits, yeah.
I went through and counted them last night. It was like 270 something that were not cow tags or turkey tags or something that are.
Well, the turkey tags would still be limited entry.
Well, but I didn't count those.
Sure.
That are deer, elk, bear, antelope, and once in a lifetime bighorns.
And I'm trying to remember the percentage. It's less than 10% of the draw.
So if an individual purchases say a once in a lifetime, I'm just going to use bighorn sheep, and they've also been putting in for that hunt. They purchase one. Do they lose their points?
They don't lose them, but they can't put in anymore. So they get to keep them.
So that's their once in a lifetime hunt.
They're done. They're done in that aspect. Now they could buy another one. It doesn't preclude them from purchasing another one, but they can't put in for the draw.
What about limited entry hunts? Like if they buy one,
Do they incur the waiting period?
yeah, do they have to wait?
I don't think so. But on once in a lifetime, it does kick them out of the draw.
So could you technically, I doubt maybe it's happened, buy one and also
You can't do it a year.
I don't think that.
Well, that was one expo tag.
So it could be subsequent years, or you could have to give one back. Right. But you can't have two buck or bull permits.
So I looked at the 2022 stuff and I ran some numbers. So as the division in your presentation, you talked about maximizing revenue, and I'm in favor of the conservation fund. Absolutely. It does some good work. And so I don't want to see the conservation fund go away. Matter of fact, I think there's ways we could generate a little more. So I ran some numbers. If these just, and I ran it on 167, I believe, like bull elk, buck deer, bighorn sheep. I excluded the cow tags. But if these tags were set aside in the regular normal draw process as conservation permits, and there was a drawing at only $15 to put in for $15. And if everybody that put in for a hunt said, hey, I'm going to put in for that limited entry or once in a lifetime permit for $15, who's not going to, right? For a chance at it. In 2022, the conservation permit program, and I forgot my paper, it raised about $6 million, a little over $6 million.
Yeah, that sounds right.
If individuals only put in for one of these conservation permits for $15, we raised $8 million. So I love the fund. There's a lot of us at my age, particularly, will never, because of the point creep, will never draw some of these limited entry or once in a lifetime permits. We'll never do it. If we do draw a limited entry hunt, essentially at my age, that is a once in a lifetime hunt. And so I don't hold any animus to those who purchased these permits. They've worked under the rules they were given. And I think the fund has done some good. A lot of good, quite a lot of good. I just think maybe, and as you said in your presentation, sometimes programs need changing. I want to keep the fund. I want to maximize the revenue. I also want to maximize opportunity. The fact is, we cannot all go purchase these permits. Matter of fact, very few can. And so just that simple math, I thought, we've got a big opportunity on the table there that we're missing out. And I kind of wrote a program. I'll give it to you. I'll have to run home and get it or email it to you, but I like the conservation groups. I think there's room for them to still participate in raising money for this fund, and still help draw people to their banquets and still help them raise funds as well. Yeah, I think it's time for maybe a little reorganization. I think we can up the fund and we can open opportunities. And the other thing is, 2 years ago, there was a change in one of the programs. There's a Division of Wildlife. They stated that they manage according to the North American model. Is that correct? As close as they can?
We try to apply those principles whenever we can, and obviously they're not. Obviously, the conservation permit program is not part of that, right? I mean, the money goes back into it.
Right.
Right, but we do strive to live as close as we can to the North American model.
Like I said, I like the program. I like what it does. I've read the North American model. It's not a very long document. But I think we're not there in this program. And so that's my comment.
Any other questions from the RAC? We'll go, any questions from the public? Just summarize what comments we can go back to.
Yeah, it looked like there were two people that responded on this. It was split. Well, one of them somewhat agreed and the other one strongly agreed. Was one particular comment left, but it applied to the convention tags, the 200 that are offered at the expo. And they just felt like that validation should not have to be in person, that maximize more revenue by letting people apply remotely and not actually have to attend the expo to validate. Again, that's convention tags and not necessarily the conservation permit program, but no other comments for the electronic comments pertaining to this item.
I don't think we have any public comments on that item either. But we'll go into RAC comments and discussions. Thank you, Richie, for your comments.
And I'd say, I apologize. I was going to bring the numbers. So anybody that wants one, I can run home and grab one, or I can email it to you.
I think he and Richie are it's kind of interesting. We've kind of come to a similar conclusion here. I feel like we should maybe entertain making a motion that the Wildlife Board looks into at least taking a portion of these tags. I don't want to take them all out of the auction process. I think it's been a very good program, but I would like to see the general public have more opportunity for these conservation tags. And also, I think it could raise more money. Like he's saying, we could take 20% of them or 25% of them and even have the conservation organizations run the draws. And I think we could increase the revenue from them. I personally think there is this program's a little oversaturated. I see what you're saying about it. We're increasing it's the money's being raised every time, but at the same time, I think there's enough people out there that will pay whatever they have to get some of these tags that they'll pay it. If you reduce it, they'll pay more. And then if they see like, oh, there's 5 of them up for auction at all these banquets. I mean, you go to these banquets and there's someone on the phone. They're not even being sold to the people in the room. They're being sold on the phone, over the phone to somebody. So I think initially I wanted to reduce the whole number of these tags, but I was actually watching the Southeast RAC last night and the idea popped in about doing a raffle instead, or not a raffle, a draw. And I think that's a way we could increase the public's opportunity for these tags, and then not even just, a different way from what the conservation tags are, because conservation tags, you have to show up in person, you have to validate in person. It's hard for a lot of people to do that. This would be open to nationwide. Anyone that wants to apply for them could apply for them, and I think you could raise a lot more money that way.
So I agree with the comment that Miles read from online. It's a little bit off subject, but on that in-person validation, I mean, it's kind of like putting in for a conservation tag that's earmarked for conservation for $15. I mean, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put in for more than one. So sky's the limit really on how much could be raised. That was just based on one. But I mean, I like to put in for those $5 deals, but tough time. I mean, cabin season starts in, I mean, not everybody can make it out there for the $5 in-person deal. So I would like him to look at that, see if we could open that up.
Wouldn't it just take a conservation group to decide to do that, and they could do that because they're allocated permits, right? Like sportsmen say, I don't know if someone's here for that, but I know there's a friend that I won't name his name, but a public will say, he said he would love if he could clone himself, keep farming, just have someone that would make a sportsman's group that would be for the average guy. And his whole concept was that they would do just that, appeal to the guys that can spend the $5 or $10 and say, we're not gonna raffle off guns, sell these high dollar auction items and drive fancy trucks with our logos on it. As a conservation group, we're gonna take 100% back, and then we're gonna exceed all these other groups, these big names out there. We're gonna exceed the contribution that they are making so that we take, because I think, is that correct, that there's a tier, like however much dollars that group can commit to, that's also dictated how many tags they're able to auction. Isn't there something with that?
So that's all part of the draft and how the draft works. You get permits based on past performance.
Right. His comment was, if you could outperform the conservation groups as a new conservation group that truly is by the public, then you could take a lot of these tags and put them back into it. And his whole model was exactly what you're saying, is our group is going to do $10 tags and open to everyone. You just have to come to our website, whatever. And there might be rules against it, but it's kind of that same concept that he was bringing up. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. There's a lot of interesting comments there.
I have one more question come up while you was doing your presentation. The Bighorn and I forgot to ask during the comments section, or the question section, the bighorn, draw hunters, you guys have extended the variance, or doing away with the variance and just making it permanent, that they have till the end of the year.
That's the recommendation.
But that's not what the draw hunters have?
No, the draw hunters have a season date, yeah. And essentially either way, you know, this was brought up in the past, essentially those permits are 100% success with very few exceptions. I mean, there are a few tags here or there that don't get filled, but, yeah, the recommendation is to extend those to the end.
I have a hard time giving a big money guy, especially with the conservation. It's not like they're buying the sportsman or the governor tag or whatever. They're giving them extra days on season that the general public hunter doesn't have, that should have spent 30 points on the tag.
I totally understand that.
Any other comments on the side?
I'm with Jake and Richie. Like, I have philosophical issues with this because, you know, wildlife and the North American model and the public trust. And it kind of gives me heartburn when I think about all the tags that go to the highest bidder. I really like the idea of a raffle or something, just to give opportunity to anyone.
But you're in favor of the fund.
Yes, I'm in favor of the fund. I just, you know, when I used to teach high school wildlife biology, I taught the North American model, and wildlife is in a public trust, and I struggle with this.
I appreciate your consistency. I heard you say that before on another program.
I guess maybe I started my one comment pointing this out, but it could take a group that's existing. They could do something like this, right? Is there anything against one of the groups that is getting tagged saying, now I know there's the 200 expo tags, but now we're gonna say, if you join the Mule Deer Foundation for $30, you can then put into this.
The rule on how they have to be sold is pretty clear. Yeah, it's pretty clear, and there are reasons for that, but it is.
So the rule states they have to be auctioned off.
Yes, as it's written.
It would be a rule change.
Yeah.
The governor would have to sign, but it would not have to be legislated. Am I correct?
I don't think, I think it would just be in the rule.
I think we could do it rules, which it'd be nicer to do it in the rules than go through the legislative process.
Maybe we're looking at making a motion, and this is what I was intending on doing anyways, making a motion to have the division and the wildlife board look into converting a percentage of these tags. I was thinking 25% off the top, at least for a trial period, to see how it works and see if it ain't making more money after a 3 or 5 year period, they can go back to how they was doing it before. But I would like to, but maybe with the motion to be to have them look at that and see if, and you know, we do what we can, and then it's up to the wildlife board to take it up or not. But
I would like to see the percentage higher, but I like it.
How do we want to make the motion? Did you have it written down, Jake?
It's kind of changed, but
Do we want to approve some of like the administrative things that need to change?
So ultimately, we'll need a recommendation from the RAC on the.
So 2 motions, probably.
we probably have to approve the rules as is for now, and then make a second motion for the wildlife board and the RAC to look at that. Do we want to make a motion just to approve the as presented?
I'll make the motion that we approve the rural changes as proposed by the DWR Conservation Permit Program.
Richie made that motion.
I'll second that.
Tasha seconded. All in favor of that motion? Okay, unanimous. I'm raising my hand just to show you that that's easy. If you want to vote yes. I keep my hands down. Okay, and then so that passed. Is there another motion?
Yeah, so do we want to, does anyone have an opinion on what the percentage should be? I think this would get more traction if it's kind of at a lower number for now and a trial period possibly.
I'd like to see 50% to start. I have real problems with that period, just because to some degree, it's almost, yeah, anyway, I won't get into it, but I would settle for 50%.
Okay. What if we just say a percentage of the tax and let them come up with that? Because in the end, they're gonna have to totally go over all this themselves and come up with what they think will work. But I'd imagine you'll have to bring it to the RACs at some point. If you guys, basically we say to you and the wildlife board takes it up and says this seems like a decent idea. So
Yeah,
I want you guys to look at taking a percentage of these tags and making them draw tags.
Yeah, so this is a latter motion. I think it's completely appropriate. I think, am I allowed to help on this? Okay, so I guess I'm not gonna tell you a percentage. I think you're gonna have to work to that or not work to that or whatever you decide, but I think motion would be to, as it pertains to the conservation permit rule, because that's what we're talking about, that this RAC would like to see another method where those permits could still generate revenue aside from the typical draw, right? Because this would be in addition to the typical draw, and be in a way that where the general public, a majority of the general public could participate if they so chose. That's what I think you're saying. That's really pretty wordy myself.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's what I'm hearing from the RAC.
Yeah, I like it.
It's also not adding those, it's taking them from.
So I can't make any motions. Clear. I'm just interpreting what I'm hearing, but somebody's gonna have to work through that, so I'll sit back down.
No, I like what he said. I think we just make a motion to kick it to the wildlife board to look at other options to generate revenue.
With these tags, not an additional tag.
Right, with these conservation tags to generate revenue for the conservation fund and open it more broadly to the public.
Sound like
That's
a
the
motion?
motion.
That's the motion.
I'll second that.
Oh my.
Yeah.
We're gonna play that back.
Yeah, slow.
I almost want to throw the word affordable in there. but-
Yeah.
I guess, maybe tell me if this is off base, but motions to have the wildlife board look at different ways to generate revenue from conservation.
And open, from the current conservation permits.
Yeah, okay.
And open it for more opportunities for the public.
Okay. And open more opportunities.
Open those
And
tags.
drawing types.
Affordable.
I think Randy's here, he'll know what. He'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
He's getting the gist.
I gotta run down where I sleep tonight.
I'll give you a letter to that. I've had that for over a year. I just didn't.
Maybe to say two, open more. So let me read what I said, see if I have, so the motion would be to have the wildlife board look at different ways to generate revenue from current conservation permits to open more affordable avenues for the general public.
Yeah.
For all of that.
Sounds good.
So Richie, good.
Continue to read.
Okay, those in favor of the slaughter motion? Okay. Unanimous. Thank you. Any other discussions on that item or motion? Thank you, Opie, for helping us out and doing, answering questions. You work on that. And I think we're to the end, because we had a regional presentation on the others, so. If there's anything else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion, I'll second that. Jake, second. Thank you. All in favor?